Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Music Corner. Now, today I'm going to attempt to teach you about sentence fragments, but with music. You see, music is natural to us humans. We can feel certain things about it. English, on the other hand, is often confusing and hard to understand. So let's combine the two and see if it makes it any easier. So, what is a sentence fragment? Purdue simply defines a fragment as an incomplete sentence, that being a sentence missing either a subject or verb, or it is not an independent clause. Often, a fragment is a part of a sentence that has been disconnected from another part with a period. This can usually be resolved by removing the period and replacing it with another form of punctuation, whether it be a comma, a semicolon, or a colon. Let's look at an example. I need to leave school because I'm very sick. In this case, the second part is a fragment. This can be fixed in a few different ways. One option is to replace the period with a comma. This is probably the best option, as it is the most fluent way to connect the two ideas. If you would prefer a break between the two clauses, for whatever reason, you could get rid of because and either leave it as a period or replace it with a semicolon. Now, let's look at our next example, a time of desperate need. This is not a sentence as it lacks a verb. This could be fixed in too many ways to count, so we'll just pick two for now. Use the subject given and add a different subject and verb like this. Sarah was in a time of desperate need. This turns the fragment, a time of desperate need, to describe Sarah's situation by creating a prepositional phrase. You could also use the fragment as the subject. A time of desperate need would ruin Sarah's life. The final way a sentence could be a fragment is if it lacks a subject. These are less common and they cause significant confusion when trying to read them. They're pretty obviously wrong. By hitting a pole with your car leads to a smashed bumper. This is fixed in one of two ways. The first is to simply remove the transition, in this case, removing the word by. The other way is to add a comma after car and insert a subject to the second part. By hitting a pole with your car, you would smash your bumper. Now let's look at some weird ones. Go, move aside, and pass the salt. All are complete sentences, but why? All three of these have an implied subject, that being you. Kind of weird, right? Now how about the other side? Let's look at she needs. Oddly enough, this is not a complete sentence, although it has a subject and a verb. This is because needs is something called a transitive verb. A transitive verb relies on a direct object in the sentence. This is also the case with linking verbs, which are verbs that describe the subject instead of giving it an action, such as felt, is, and seems. Our sentence can be fixed by simply saying she needs food. Now comes the fun part, and I've grabbed my handy dandy guitar here to try and explain it. You see, sentence fragments aren't always wrong. Just like all other parts of English, there are exceptions. When used in moderation, sentence fragments can add emphasis or create a more conversational type of writing. Take this song, for example. You see, the human ear naturally recognizes the ending to this super simple three-chord progression. It ends on the root note But in this case, the writer of this song decided to throw in a little spice. And I'm not going to play the rest of the course because I'm sort of limited on time here. But the artist goes on to finish the course and eventually ends on the root note. But I think it's a really cool example of showing how going out of the box and stepping out of the box creates a unique style, and it gives the song suspense and direction. All of these things can also be achieved by a sentence fragment. So how can you fit a fragment into your writing? Fragments are great as questions or answers to questions. Consider these. I would survive? How? Not sure. This has two fragments and adds a feeling of conversation to the writing. Another way to use a fragment is if you're exclaiming something, like an announcer shouting, "What a play!" They can also be used to emphasize repetition, like this segment from the New York Times. Government was, in this era, a part of the problem, a big part. Fragments can also be used for negation, such as the first two cars were blue, not the third. Lastly, sentence fragments can be used to avoid redundancy. Like in this example, I want to move out of LA. Go somewhere cold. with less people, with more nature. Pretty much all of these examples add emphasis in some way or another. The most important thing about sentence fragments is that they have a purpose for being there. Fragments are everywhere, from famous books, journalism, essays, you name it. We have become so accustomed to them, we barely notice them anymore. If you're not sure whether it is the right time for a sentence fragment, then don't do it. It's just a safer play. But by all means, include it in your writing. Just don't overuse them.